Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at the chaos of modern life, endless deadlines, unexpected setbacks, the weight of responsibilities pressing down on your shoulders. It feels overwhelming, doesn't it? Like no matter how hard you push forward, the world keeps throwing obstacles in your path. But what if I told you there's a way to stand firm in the face of that chaos, to cultivate a spirit so strong that no storm can shake you? That's the power of an indomitable spirit, and it's not just reserved for ancient warriors or legendary leaders. It's something you can build starting today. 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic philosophers, faced his own storms, wars, betrayals, the weight of an empire on his shoulders. Yet he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Those words weren't just philosophy, they were a battle cry for resilience, a reminder that true strength comes from within. And here's the surprising truth. Stoicism wasn't designed for marble statues or dusty textbooks. It was crafted for real life, for moments when the ground feels like it's crumbling beneath you, and you need a way to keep standing. This video is your guide to tapping into that ancient wisdom and making it work for you right now. We're diving into practical Stoic practices that transform mental strength from an abstract idea into a daily habit. You'll learn how to reframe challenges, disarm fear, and find clarity in the midst of chaos, because here's the thing, life isn't going to stop testing you. But with the right tools, you can stop feeling like a victim of circumstance and start acting like the unshakable force you were meant to be. So if you're ready to build a mindset that doesn't just endure but thrives under pressure, you're in the right place. Let's begin. The Stoics had a radically different view of strength than what we often celebrate today. They didn't equate an indomitable spirit with loud defiance or never flinching in the face of pain. Instead, they saw it as something far more subtle and far more powerful. Picture a tree in a storm. The rigid branches snap under pressure, while the flexible ones bend, adapt, and survive. That's the Stoic ideal, not resisting every gust of wind but learning to move with it without breaking. Take Epictetus, the philosopher born into slavery, who faced hardships most of us can't imagine. He didn't preach about conquering the world, he taught mastery over one thing, your own mind. His famous Dichotomy of Control is the cornerstone of this mindset. Some things are within our power, our judgments, our actions, our desires. Everything else, noise, the weather, other people's opinions, sudden setbacks, these are external. And trying to control them is like shouting at the rain to stop. Real resilience, according to Stoicism, isn't about changing the storm, it's about adjusting your sails. Modern culture often glorifies the kind of toughness that burns out fast, pushing through pain at all costs, ignoring emotions, pretending vulnerability is weakness. But the Stoics knew better. They saw endurance as a quiet discipline, a daily practice of returning to center no matter how hard life pushes you off balance. Marcus Aurelius called it the art of acquiescence, not passive surrender, but clear-eyed acceptance of what you can't change so you can focus your energy where it actually matters. Think about the last time you faced something beyond your control, a traffic jam that made you late, a harsh comment that stung, a plan that fell apart. How much time did you spend raging against it? Now imagine if instead you'd asked Epictetus' question, "Is this within my power?" If not, the Stoic response is simple: acknowledge it, then redirect. That shift from frustration to focus is where indomitable spirit begins. So here's a challenge: redefine resilience for yourself. not as never feeling fear, but as feeling it and still choosing wisdom. Not as never falling, but as always getting up with clearer eyes, because true strength isn't about the armor you wear, it's about the calm you keep, no matter what life throws your way. If there's one Stoic idea that cuts through the noise of modern life like a scalpel, it's the dichotomy of control. Picture this: you're sitting at your desk, heart pounding after your manager critiques your project in front of the team. Your first instinct might be to obsess over their tone, replay the moment in your head, or even draft a defensive email. But here's where Stoicism flips the script. 2,000 years ago, Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius with a radical suggestion. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. He wasn't dismissing pain, he was offering a lifeline. That criticism, it's external, your reaction, that's where your power lies. This is the essence of the dichotomy of control, a tool so simple it feels revolutionary. Split your world into two categories. What's up to you, your effort, your attitude, your values, and what isn't, other people's actions, delays, even the weather. The magic happens when you stop pouring energy into the second bucket. Think of it like carrying an umbrella in a downpour. You can't stop the rain, but you can choose not to get drenched. Let's make this practical. Grab a sheet of paper right now and draw a line down the middle. On one side, list your current worries, a looming deadline, a strained friendship, the price of groceries. Now cross out everything that depends on outside forces. What's left? Maybe your preparation for that deadline, or how you choose to communicate with your friend. Those are your levers. The rest, let them go like leaves in a river. Here's why this works. Our brains are wired to fixate on threats, even imaginary ones. The Stoics recognized this 2 millennia before neuroscience did. By categorizing your concerns, you're not ignoring reality, you're reclaiming agency. Seneca put it bluntly, you're enslaved to whatever you can't walk away from. When you stop tying your peace to things you can't dictate, something extraordinary happens. The weight lifts, your focus sharpens, you become, as Marcus Aurelius said, like a rock, waves crash against it, but it stands unmoved. Try this today. The next time frustration bubbles up, a delayed train, a rude comment, pause and ask, is this mine to solve? If not, redirect that energy. Adjust your grip, not the wind, because here's the secret no one tells you. Indomitable spirit isn't about controlling life. It's about realizing you never needed to. Amor Fati, the love of fate. It sounds poetic, maybe even a little mystical, but this Stoic principle is about as practical as it gets. Picture Marcus Aurelius alone in his tent during a military campaign, writing these words by lamplight. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't just waxing philosophical, he was training his mind to see obstacles as fuel. That's the heart of Amor Fati, not just accepting what happens, but embracing it, even when it hurts. Centuries later, Friedrich Nietzsche would echo this idea with his famous phrase, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, to want nothing to be different, not in the future, not in the past, not for all eternity." But let's cut through the grandeur. What does this look like in real life? Take an athlete like Serena Williams. After life-threatening complications from childbirth, doctors told her she might never play again. She didn't just recover, she used that struggle to redefine her game. In her own words, "I've had to learn to fight for every point, to love the grind." That's Amor Fati in action, not denying the pain but letting it sharpen you. Marcus Aurelius' journals are full of these moments. When his co-emperor Lucius Verus died suddenly, leaving him to rule Rome alone during a plague and war, he didn't collapse under the weight. He wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. Notice the word woven. He saw setbacks as threads in a larger tapestry, not random strokes of bad luck, but part of the fabric that makes us stronger. Here's how you can practice this today. Think of one recent setback, a missed promotion, a failed project, a personal rejection. Now ask yourself, what did this teach me? How did it force me to grow? Maybe that rejection saved you from a path that wasn't right. Maybe that failure revealed a skill you need to hone. The Stoics called this the art of turning obstacles upside down. Your worst moment could be the pivot point you'll thank yourself for later. So try this reframe. Next time life throws you a curveball, don't just tolerate it, thank it. Not with fake positivity, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that every challenge is secretly an invitation to become who you're meant to be. That's the alchemy of Amor Fati, turning lead into gold, one unwelcome moment at a time. Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic practice of negative visualization, might sound pessimistic at first glance. But dig deeper, and you'll find it's one of the most liberating tools for building mental resilience. Seneca put it this way: what is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. He wasn't advocating for dwelling on doom, he was teaching the art of inoculation. Just as exposing the body to small doses of a virus builds immunity, rehearsing adversity in the mind prepares you to face it with poise when it arrives. Take a moment to picture this. You wake up to a flat tire, your boss cancels an important meeting last minute, and your internet crashes before a deadline. Most people would spiral into frustration, but what if you'd already walked through this scenario in your mind? The Stoics called this premeditation, and it's not about expecting the worst, it's about stripping fear of its power. By visualizing setbacks beforehand, you remove the element of surprise, that sharp sting of the unexpected. Suddenly, obstacles become puzzles to solve, not crises to panic over. Here's how to put this into action today. Set aside 5 minutes tonight to imagine a day where everything goes sideways. Your alarm fails, your coffee spills, your train is delayed. Play it out like a movie in your mind. But here's the crucial twist. Instead of resisting these moments, script your calm response. See yourself taking a breath, adjusting your plan, even laughing at the absurdity. This isn't manifesting disaster, it's training your brain to default to resilience. The Roman Stoics did this daily, not because they feared life, but because they refused to let life catch them off guard. Consider how athletes use this technique. A gymnast doesn't just practice flawless routines, she visualizes stumbling on the landing and recovering smoothly. That mental rehearsal is what turns potential disasters into mere transitions. The same applies to your life. When you premeditate challenges, you're not inviting them, you're building a reflex to meet them with clarity. So ask yourself, how much lighter would your struggles feel if you'd already walked through them in your mind? That's the gift of Premeditatio Malorum. It doesn't just prepare you for storms, it teaches you to dance in the rain. The Stoics had a counterintuitive secret. The very thing blocking your path could become your greatest ally. Marcus Aurelius didn't just face obstacles, he weaponized them. During the Marcomannic Wars, with Rome ravaged by plague and his armies stretched thin, he didn't curse his luck. He wrote in his journals, "The obstacle in the path becomes the path." That wasn't just poetic, it was tactical. Every supply shortage forced smarter logistics. Every betrayal revealed loyal allies. The barriers didn't weaken his campaign, they refined it. Centuries later, Ryan Holiday revived this idea in his book, The Obstacle is the Way, showing how modern leaders like Steve Jobs and Amelia Earhart used the same principle. But the real masterclass comes from Thomas Edison. When fire destroyed his lab in 1914, consuming years of research, he didn't mourn. He rebuilt from scratch, later saying, Thank goodness all our mistakes were burned up. Now we can start fresh. That's Stoic alchemy, transforming disaster into opportunity by asking one radical question. How could this help me? Here's how to apply it today. Take that problem gnawing at you, the project setback, the financial pinch, the unexpected rejection. Now flip it. Could that delay give you time to refine your work? Might that budget cut force creative solutions you'd never have tried otherwise? The Stoics called this active acceptance, not just enduring hurdles but interrogating them for hidden value. Edison's factory fire led to more efficient designs. Marcus's wartime crises produced timeless wisdom. Your obstacle, it's holding a lesson you'll only see when you stop resisting and start examining. Try this now. Grab a pen and write down one current challenge. Below it, list 3 ways it might secretly serve you. Maybe that difficult coworker is training your patience. Perhaps that missed opportunity is redirecting you to something better. The pattern is universal. History's most resilient minds didn't avoid barriers, they mined them for gold. Your obstacles aren't roadblocks, they're the raw material for your next breakthrough. There's a practice so powerful it can snap your life into focus in an instant, yet most of us avoid even thinking about it. The Stoics called it Memento Mori, remember you must die. At first glance it might sound morbid, but this wasn't about fear, it was about liberation. Seneca put it bluntly in his letters, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. He wasn't scolding, he was handing you a key. The awareness of life's finiteness isn't meant to paralyze you, it's designed to propel you. Picture this. You're handed an hourglass with sand rapidly slipping through. Every grain is a moment you'll never get back. That's the image the Stoics kept close. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself each morning, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do, say, and think, not as a threat but as a clarifier. When death sits at the table, trivialities vanish, arguments over petty slights. Pointless chasing approval from people who don't matter, a waste of precious grains. Now contrast that with how most of us live today, scrolling endlessly, numbing out with distractions, postponing what matters for a someday that may never come. Seneca saw this 2,000 years ago. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they're most wasteful. He called out the illusion of busyness that masks procrastination, the meetings, the gossip, the chasing of things that leave us emptier. Here's the challenge that cuts through the noise. If you had just 1 year left, what would you stop tolerating? Who would you spend time with? What unfinished work would finally get your full attention? The answer isn't about bucket list extravagance. It's about stripping away the non-essential to reveal what's always mattered. Steve Jobs echoed this when he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices." This isn't morbidity, it's the ultimate productivity hack. When you stop pretending you have unlimited time, every no becomes easier, every yes more intentional. The Roman Stoics kept skulls on their desks not to dwell on darkness, but to ignite light. A life well lived isn't about avoiding death, it's about letting its certainty sharpen how you live. So ask yourself today, if not now, when? And if not this, what truly deserves your limited sand? Marcus Aurelius never intended his personal journal to become one of history's most revered books. He scribbled those words by candlelight, not for an audience but as a private anchor, a way to steady himself against the storms of ruling an empire. That's the first lesson of Stoic journaling. It's not about eloquence or performance. It's about raw, unfiltered dialogue with yourself. Think of it as mental floss, scraping away the debris of yesterday so you can meet today with clarity. His meditations weren't polished essays. They were messy, repetitive, sometimes even contradictory, and that's exactly what made them powerful. Here's how to borrow his method. Each morning, before the world floods your mind with noise, take 5 minutes with 3 simple prompts. First, what challenge will I face today? Not a vague worry pinpointed. Maybe it's a difficult conversation with your partner, or resisting the urge to procrastinate on a project. Naming it strips away its ambiguity. Next, what virtue can I lean on? The Stoics had 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, but you might choose patience, creativity, or grit. This isn't about perfection, it's about intention. Finally, where did I fall short yesterday? Not to wallow in guilt, but to spot patterns. Did you snap at a coworker, waste hours scrolling? The goal is progress, not self-flagellation. Consider how Marcus did this. In one entry, he chastises himself for sleeping in. When you arise reluctant, remember this: you're made for action. In another, he prepares for encounters with difficult people. Say to yourself in the morning, I shall meet the interfering, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful. But here's the key: he never stopped at observation. He always added the pivot. They act this way because they don't know better, but I do. That's the alchemy of Stoic journaling, transforming complaint into strategy, frustration into fuel. Your journal doesn't need leather binding or perfect prose. A napkin will do. The magic lies in the habit, not writing when inspired, but writing to become inspired. Naval Ravikant, the entrepreneur and philosopher, keeps a similar practice. My journal is the compass that keeps me from drifting. He doesn't wait for epiphanies. He hunts them down each morning with pen and paper. Try this tomorrow. Set your alarm 7 minutes earlier. Grab whatever paper is nearest, a sticky note, the back of a receipt, and answer those 3 prompts. 5 minutes is enough. Over time, you'll start spotting the gaps between who you are and who you want to be. And that gap, that's where growth lies. Not in grand resolutions, but in daily, deliberate stitches weaving the fabric of your character. Marcus didn't build his resilience in a day. He built it sentence by sentence, morning by morning. Your turn. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, the kind where brake lights stretch endlessly ahead, and your dashboard clock mocks your growing lateness. Your grip tightens on the wheel. Heat creeps up your neck. That's the moment Epictetus warned about 2,000 years ago when he said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." He wasn't talking about grand ambitions. He was pinpointing the micro-battles of daily life, where unexamined impulses hijack your peace. The Stoics called this practice Prosochē, a razor-sharp attention to your inner world before it spirals into reaction. Here's the twist: Stoic mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind like some meditation apps suggest. It's about filling it with awareness. Picture your emotions as passengers in a car. Most of us let them grab the wheel: rage driving your words in an argument, anxiety slamming the accelerator on poor decisions. Prosochē is the act of shifting those emotions to the backseat. Not suppressing them, but refusing to let them steer. When Epictetus taught, don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. He was giving you a script for that traffic jam. The honking horns, external. Your clenched jaw, that's your body reacting before your mind chooses how to respond. Let's make this tangible. For the next hour, conduct an experiment. Become a silent observer of your own reactions. Notice the itch to check your phone when boredom strikes. Catch the sigh that escapes when someone interrupts you. These aren't failures, they're data points. The Stoics believed self-awareness was the foundation of all virtue. You can't change what you don't notice. Marcus Aurelius tracked his own patterns like a scientist. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant. He wasn't being cynical, he was preloading his awareness so he could respond rather than react. Modern psychology confirms this ancient hack. Studies on emotional granularity show that simply naming an emotion, "I'm feeling frustrated, not enraged," reduces its intensity. The traffic jam becomes a lab for practicing Prosochē. Instead of muttering about lost time, ask, "What can I control right now?" Your breathing, your posture. Maybe even choosing an audiobook over angry radio commentary. That shift from passive victim to active observer is where Stoic mindfulness transforms patience from a virtue into a skill. So here's your challenge. Pick any mundane frustration today, a slow grocery line, a chatty coworker, and treat it as a training ground. Watch the impulse to react rise. And let it pass like a cloud, not because you're indifferent, but because you're reclaiming something precious, the space between stimulus and response where your indomitable spirit lives. Epictetus had a brilliant way of explaining how thoughts work. He said impressions knock at the door of your mind like unexpected visitors. But here's the catch, you don't have to fling the door open and invite them in for dinner. That's the discipline of assent, the Stoic art of pausing before letting a thought take root. Imagine this, you're about to give a presentation and a voice whispers, "You're going to embarrass yourself." Most of us treat that thought as fact, letting it hijack our focus, but Epictetus would say, that's just a knock, you choose whether to answer. This isn't about positive thinking or denial. It's about recognizing that thoughts are suggestions, not commands. Picture your mind as a courtroom. Every negative belief, "I'm not good enough, this will fail, they'll reject me," stands as a witness. The discipline of assent is you, the judge, demanding evidence before ruling. Take that self-doubt before your bench. Ask, is this true? Is this helpful? Would I let a stranger say this to someone I love? Most thoughts crumble under scrutiny. Let's try it now. Think of one recurring thought that steals your peace. Maybe I'll never get ahead, or things always go wrong for me. Now play Epictetus. When that thought knocks, don't ignore it, interrogate it. Really, always name 3 times things worked out. This isn't self-help fluff, it's cognitive behavioral therapy's ancestor. Modern research shows that labeling and challenging automatic thoughts reduces anxiety. The Stoics were simply ahead of the curve. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. In his journals, he'd dissect his own fears like a scientist. This thing you're worrying about, is it under your control? If not, why waste energy? He didn't suppress emotions, he scrutinized them. That's the power move. When a thought storms in, you don't have to evict it, just refuse to redecorate your life around it. Here's your challenge. For the next 24 hours, treat every negative thought as a door-to-door salesman. Don't slam the door, just don't buy what they're selling. Watch how many walk away when they realize you're not an easy customer. That space between the knock and your response. That's where freedom lives. Standing alone feels like strength, until you realize even the mightiest oak depends on the same soil, rain, and sunlight as the smallest blade of grass. The Stoics called this Sympathia, the profound interconnectedness of all things. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." He wasn't just admiring nature's beauty, he was uncovering a survival strategy for the soul. When wars and plagues tested him, he didn't retreat into isolation. He leaned into this truth: your struggles aren't unique. Your existence is woven into something vast, and that realization, its armor against despair. Modern life tricks us into forgetting this. Scrolling through curated feeds, we compare our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reels. Loneliness thrives in this illusion of separation, but the Stoics saw through it 2,000 years ago. Picture Marcus on the front lines, surrounded by soldiers, cooks, medics, each playing a role in a system far larger than themselves. He didn't see a hierarchy, he saw a living organism. All things are intertwined, he scribbled one night, and the bond is sacred. That bond wasn't poetic fluff. It was a lifeline. When he felt overwhelmed, he'd trace his connection to the farmer growing his bread, the mason who built his roads, even the stars governing the tides. Suddenly, his burdens felt shared. Here's how to activate this today. Next time a stranger serves you, the barista handing you coffee, the mail carrier leaving a package, pause. Not just to say thanks, but to truly see them as a thread in your survival network. The Stoics would call this gratitude with teeth. You don't have to write essays about cosmic unity. Start with one silent moment, acknowledging that your day depends on countless invisible hands. That frustration when your delivery is late, flip it. Someone in a warehouse, a truck, a distribution center is part of your story. Recognizing this doesn't just soften annoyance, it rewires your brain to feel held rather than stranded. Science now backs this ancient hack. Studies on moral elevation show that witnessing acts of kindness, or even remembering them, triggers physical warmth and optimism. The Stoics were early social scientists. By deliberately noticing interdependence, you short-circuit resentment. Marcus put it bluntly, to feel affection for people even when they make mistakes is uniquely human. You do it by recognizing they're your kin, not because they're perfect, but because they're part of the same hive. Try this tonight. Name 3 people you've never met who made your day possible. The engineer maintaining your city's power grid, the teacher who taught your doctor to read, the ancestor whose resilience flows in your veins. You'll never know most of your lifelines, but you can honor them by refusing to believe you're alone. That's Sympathia in action, not just philosophy, but fuel for the moments when the world feels too heavy to carry solo. The Stoics knew a secret: we're all branches of the same tree. Bend and you'll find the whole forest holding you up. History remembers Cato the Younger not for his victories, but for how he faced defeat. When Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, sparking civil war, Cato didn't rally troops or plot revenge. He did something far more radical. He chose to lose on purpose. Knowing Caesar's victory was inevitable, he systematically surrendered territory, not out of cowardice, but to expose the cost of tyranny. His final act, reading Plato's Phaedo, a dialogue on the immortality of the soul, before taking his own life rather than live under dictatorship. To modern eyes, this seems extreme. But the Stoics revered Cato not for how he died, but for how he chose to lose. His defiance wasn't in winning battles, it was in refusing to let defeat break his integrity. Fast forward 2,000 years to Admiral James Stockdale, shot down over Vietnam and held as a POW for 7 years, tortured routinely, kept in solitary confinement. He later credited Epictetus Enchiridion for his survival. Not because it promised rescue, but because it taught him to separate what he could control, his dignity, his values, from what he couldn't, his captor's cruelty, the war's outcome. When asked which prisoners struggled most in the camps, Stockdale gave a surprising answer: the optimists, those who said, "We'll be home by Christmas," only to collapse when Christmas came and went. Stockdale survived by embracing brutal reality, not with hope, but with unwavering commitment to endure whatever came. Here's what both men teach us: Stoic role models aren't chosen for their trophies or titles, but for their scars. Cato's power lay in his willingness to be the last honest man in a corrupt republic. Stockdale's strength grew in a cell where every day was a test of his philosophy. Their lives ask us a piercing question: who do you study when you're not studying success? Because anyone can be graceful in triumph. The real measure is how you move through failure. This is where your personal Stoic mentor comes in. Not as a distant historical figure, but as a living guide. Maybe it's a grandparent who weathered hardship with quiet grit, or a public figure like Nelson Mandela, who turned prison into a crucible for transformation. The key is to study their lowest moments, not their speeches on stages, but their choices in dungeons. When Mandela was offered early release in exchange for renouncing his cause, his refusal wasn't heroic, it was stoic. He couldn't control his captor's terms, but he could control his no. Try this exercise tonight. Pick one person, alive or dead, whose struggles resonate with yours. Read their biography, but skip to the chapters where everything fell apart. How did they talk to themselves in those moments? What principles did they cling to? Cotto had his copy of Plato. Stockdale repeated Epictetus' maxims. Your mentor's darkest hour holds the blueprint for your own resilience. Because here's the truth no one tells you. You don't need more examples of success. You need maps for the wastelands, and those maps are always drawn by people who learn to walk through fire without burning. There's a reason Navy SEAL train in freezing water and elite athletes push through grueling drills, not because suffering itself is valuable, but because comfort is the enemy of growth. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Musonius Rufus, the Roman philosopher who taught Epictetus, put it bluntly: how can someone become courageous if they only seek comfort? His answer was radical for its time. Practice discomfort on purpose, not as punishment but as preparation. Picture a musician rehearsing scales until their fingers ache, or a runner pushing through the wall of exhaustion. That's voluntary discomfort in action, training the mind to stay steady when life inevitably throws its worst at you. But here's where modern Stoicism parts ways with masochism. Sleeping on the floor or skipping a meal isn't about proving toughness. It's about exposing the illusions comfort creates. Take cold showers, a favorite among Stoic practitioners. The initial shock isn't the point. It's what happens after you realize the dread was worse than the reality. Your body adapts, your mind learns, this won't break me. Musonius called these acts sparring partners for the soul. Just as a boxer trains to take hits without flinching, you're conditioning your psyche to face life's blows with the same unshaken focus. History's greatest thinkers lived this. Benjamin Franklin swore by air baths, standing naked in cold rooms to harden his resolve. Theodore Roosevelt, sickly as a child, rebuilt his body through brutal outdoor workouts, later crediting this discipline for surviving the Amazon's horrors. Even Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial privileges, ate simple soldiers' rations and slept on a thin pallet. These weren't acts of deprivation, they were rehearsals for resilience. When real crises hit, war, illness, betrayal, their minds didn't panic. They'd already walked through fire in training. The key is intentionality. Random suffering teaches nothing. But deliberately choosing hardship with a purpose, that's the alchemy. Start small, skip the snooze button tomorrow, walk without headphones and let boredom rise. Say no to that extra snack when you're not truly hungry. These micro-trials reveal a profound truth. Most of what we call needs are just cravings in disguise. The Stoics knew this, that luxury is a cage padded with velvet. Every voluntary no weakens its bars. So here's your challenge. Before sunset today, do one thing that makes you hesitate. Leave your jacket at home in mild weather. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Sit silently for 10 minutes without distractions. Notice the voice that protests, "This is pointless," or "I deserve better," and recognize it as the very weakness you're training to overcome. Because someday, life will demand discomfort you didn't choose, and on that day, you'll thank yourself for every time you chose it first. Picture this. You're in the middle of a heated argument, your pulse racing, hands trembling. That moment when emotions threaten to hijack your better judgment. Now imagine having a reset button, one the Roman legions carried into battle 2,000 years ago. The Stoics called it Prosochē, the discipline of attention, and it began with something as simple as breath. When gladiators stepped into the arena, when generals faced impossible odds, they didn't rely on motivational speeches. They relied on a 4-count rhythm. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, pause for 4. This wasn't just meditation, it was tactical preparation for chaos. Modern Navy SEAL use an identical method today, calling it box breathing. The science behind it is straightforward. Controlled breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, slamming the brakes on fight or flight mode. But the Stoics understood its power long before brain scans could prove it. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by his master's brutality, taught that mastery of breath was the first step to mastering circumstances. "You are the little soul carrying around a corpse," he'd say, a jarring reminder that your body is just an instrument. The breath, that's how you tune it. Let's try it right now. Close your eyes if you can. Inhale slowly through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feel the air fill your lungs, not just your chest. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice the stillness. Now exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Letting go of tension like a bowstring releasing an arrow. Pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. That empty space, that's where clarity lives. Do this for just 30 seconds and something remarkable happens. The world doesn't change, but your relationship to it does. Marcus Aurelius wrote of this practice in the trenches of war. The breath that sustains you can also steady you. He wasn't speaking poetically. On ancient battlefields, soldiers used this rhythm to knock arrows under fire, to hold formations as cavalry charged. Today, it's how surgeons steady their hands, how athletes silence pre-game nerves. The technique hasn't evolved because it doesn't need to. When your boss's email triggers panic or your child's tantrum tests your patience, that same 4-count pattern becomes your anchor. Here's why it works. Breath is the only autonomic function you can consciously override. By hijacking that control, you send a message to your primal brain. I'm not in danger, I'm in charge. The Stoics didn't just breathe to relax, they breathed to reclaim agency. So the next time life tries to steal your composure, remember, you're not at the mercy of chaos. You're one breath away from resetting the clock. Anger burns hotter than any emotion, but here's what most people get wrong about Stoicism. It doesn't demand you extinguish that fire. It teaches you to harness it. Seneca, the philosopher who served under the volatile Emperor Nero, wrote an entire manual called On Anger, not to condemn the feeling, but to weaponize it. His insight was revolutionary. Anger, if not controlled, is more harmful than the injury that provoked it. Notice he didn't say eliminate anger, he said control it. The difference is everything. Picture a protester standing in a crowded square, fists clenched as authorities threaten violence. That rage could explode into recklessness, or it could fuel a disciplined sit-in. This is the Stoic pivot, transforming raw emotion into targeted action. Seneca observed this in the gladiator schools of Rome. The best fighters didn't enter the arena frothing with fury. They channeled adrenaline into precise strikes. He wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay, not to dismiss the injustice, but to ensure the response lands with surgical impact." History's most effective changemakers understood this alchemy. When Gandhi organized the Salt March, he didn't rally Indians to burn British offices. He turned colonial salt taxes, a symbol of oppression, into the focal point of peaceful resistance. The anger was real, the strategy was deliberate. Seneca would have recognized this instantly. No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. So here's the challenge hiding in your own frustrations. That simmering resentment about workplace inequality, The fury at systemic injustice. Don't swallow it. Don't let it erupt untamed. Ask Seneca's question, what can this anger build? Maybe it's mentoring someone overlooked for promotions. Maybe it's writing letters to legislators instead of ranting online. The Stoic secret isn't indifference, it's direction. Think of anger as steam in an engine. Unvented, it blows apart the pipes. Harnessed, it drives progress. Your task isn't to deny the heat, it's to decide where to point the piston. Marcus Aurelius had a secret weapon against petty frustrations, one he practiced nightly before sleep. He'd close his eyes and visualize Earth from space. Vast oceans, silent continents, countless lives unfolding simultaneously. Your argument with a coworker, your financial worry, from that vantage point they shrank to specks. He called this the view from above, and it wasn't about dismissing problems, but about seeing them in true proportion. Picture a heated debate over who left dishes in the office sink. At ground level, it feels personal, an affront to your dignity, but zoom out to the building, then the city, then the curve of the planet. Suddenly, those unwashed mugs become laughably small against the backdrop of human existence. This exercise works because it hijacks your brain's default perspective. Our minds evolved to treat every slight as a survival threat. That's why a rude comment can ruin your afternoon. The view from above forces a recalibration. Astronauts report experiencing the overview effect when seeing Earth from orbit, a profound shift where borders vanish and conflicts seem absurd. You don't need a rocket to access this. When Marcus journaled how quickly all things disappear, in the universe the bodies themselves, in time the remembrance of them, he was crafting mental armor. That project deadline consuming your thoughts, in 5 years it'll be a hazy memory. In 5 centuries, dust. Try this tonight. Pick one current stressor, a family disagreement, a looming bill. Now mentally ascend through 3 layers. First, see yourself from across the room. Notice your posture, the tension in your shoulders. Next, imagine floating above your neighborhood, watching cars inch along like ants. Finally, picture the planet as a blue marble hanging in darkness. That problem still exists, but its weight changes. The magic lies in what happens next. Returning to ground level, you'll find the emotion drained from the issue, leaving only the practical core. Ancient Stoics used this to endure exile and betrayal. You can use it to navigate traffic jams or social media spats. The goal isn't to minimize your experience, but to master the art of perspective, because few things are as heavy as they feel when we're nose to nose with them. Here's the twist: this practice also works in reverse. Zoom in with equal intensity on life's beauties, the warmth of your coffee cup, the sound of laughter downstairs. The view from above isn't just for shrinking problems, it's for expanding gratitude. Marcus knew this duality well. After staring down wars and plagues, he'd write, "The universe is change, life is perspective." Your toughest day is just a single brushstroke in a much larger painting. The brush still matters, but the hand holding it grows steadier when it remembers the canvas. Seneca believed the hours before sleep weren't just for resting the body, they were a training ground for the soul. Every night, he'd perform what he called his Evening Audit, a ritual as deliberate as a surgeon's hand wash. Picture this: the candles flicker as he reviews the day's battles, not just what happened, but how he responded. Did he lose his temper in the marketplace? Did he indulge in gossip at dinner? These weren't guilt sessions, they were progress reports. He'd write in his letters, "The mind should be called to account daily." What evils did you resist today? Where did you stumble? This wasn't self-punishment, it was sharpening the blade of awareness so tomorrow's cuts would be cleaner. Now contrast that with how most of us spend our evenings today. The glow of screens replaces candlelight as we numb ourselves with endless scrolling. flooding our minds with other people's highlight reels instead of examining our own raw footage. The Stoics would call this a tragic waste of fertile darkness. Those final waking moments shape your subconscious, priming your mind either for growth or distraction. Seneca warned, "The body must be measured by the soul, not the soul by the body." Yet we often do the opposite, letting our exhausted bodies drag our souls into restless sleep, only to wake feeling emptier than when we closed our eyes. Here's how to reclaim this sacred space. Before bed, grab any scrap of paper, a napkin, the back of a receipt, and answer 3 questions. What challenged me today? Where did I act with courage? What lesson will I carry forward? Not a diary entry, not a vent session. Be brief as a soldier's field report. Maybe today's challenge was biting your tongue when a colleague took credit for your idea. The courage, choosing professionalism over pettiness. The lesson, that your integrity isn't diminished by others' smallness. This practice takes less time than brushing your teeth but compounds like interest over decades. History's most resilient minds all had versions of this ritual. Benjamin Franklin tracked his virtues nightly in a ledger. Queen Elizabeth I reportedly reviewed state matters with her advisors before sleep. The common thread, they didn't let the day's chaos echo unchecked into the night. Like Seneca, they sifted through the rubble for gold. Try this tonight. Place your phone in another room. Sit with just your thoughts and that scrap of paper. Write your 3 lines without overthinking, no grammar checks, no poetic flair. Then blow out the candle, literal or metaphorical, knowing you've done something radical. You've ended the day not as a passive consumer of life, but as its active student. As Seneca promised, he who studies himself at night grows wise by morning. Admiral James Stockdale spent 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, shackled in a cell smaller than most bathrooms. His captors broke bones, applied excruciating torture, and kept him isolated for months. Yet when asked afterward how he survived, his answer stunned researchers. "I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end." Then came the twist. The optimists didn't make it. He explained how fellow prisoners who insisted they'd be home by Christmas collapsed psychologically when those deadlines passed. Stockdale's secret, a razor-sharp balance between 2 seemingly opposing forces, unwavering faith in ultimate victory, and brutal honesty about his current hell. Philosophers now call this the Stockdale Paradox, and its roots trace straight back to Epictetus' teaching. First say what you would be, then do what you have to do. This paradox isn't just for POW camps. Every entrepreneur knows the tension between pitching investors with confidence while staring at dwindling bank accounts. Every cancer patient balances hope for remission with clear-eyed conversations about treatment side effects. Stockdale's genius was realizing that true resilience requires both, the compass of hope and the map of reality. When his captors paraded him in propaganda films, he limped deliberately to signal covertly to intelligence agencies that he was being tortured. That's the paradox in action. Accepting the present brutality while secretly working toward eventual liberation. Modern psychology validates this ancient insight. Studies on realistic optimism show that people who acknowledge obstacles while maintaining confidence outperform both naive optimists and chronic pessimists. Consider how SpaceX engineers approach rocket launches. They celebrate each milestone with champagne, then immediately dissect every anomaly. Elon Musk famously said after early failures, "If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." That's the Stockdale mindset, toasting progress while elbow deep in diagnostics. So here's the challenge hiding in your own struggles, that side hustle you're nurturing. The fitness journey you've started, ask yourself Stockdale's twin questions. What's my unshakable truth about where this leads? Maybe it's knowing your product solves a real problem, even if sales are slow. Maybe it's trusting your body responds to consistency, even when the scale stalls. Then ask, what's the brutal reality I'm avoiding? Perhaps your marketing needs overhaul, or your nutrition plan lacks protein. The magic happens when you hold both answers simultaneously, not choosing between hope and honesty, but letting each sharpen the other. Epictetus trained Stockdale for this very tension. In the Enchiridion, he wrote, "Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will." The Vietnamese couldn't control Stockdale's mind, just as market crashes can't control an entrepreneur's creativity, or a bad diagnosis can't dictate a patient's spirit. Your version of the Stockdale Paradox might look like reviewing monthly metrics with clear eyes while keeping your vision board nearby, or physical therapy sessions where you celebrate small gains without denying the long road ahead. The prisoners who crumbled weren't weak, they simply lacked stoic bifocals. They saw either the distant mirage of freedom or the four walls of their cell, never both at once. Stockdale's legacy teaches us to fix one eye on the horizon and the other on the next right step, because resilience isn't about ignoring darkness, it's about striking matches in it, one honest, hopeful strike at a time. Seneca saw it 2,000 years ago, the frantic scurrying of people who mistake motion for progress. In On the Shortness of Life, he wrote, "Being busy does not always mean real work. The object of all work is production or accomplishment, and to either of these ends there must be forethought, system, planning, intelligence. Picture a hamster on a wheel, legs churning furiously, going nowhere. Now contrast that with an archer drawing a bow, every muscle engaged, but with singular focus on the target. That's the difference between busyness and purposeful action." The Stoics weren't against effort, they were against effort wasted on distractions disguised as duties. Here's where most time management systems fail. They help you do more, but rarely ask more of what. Seneca's solution was radical simplicity. At dawn, he'd ask himself, what 3 things today will align with my highest purpose? Not 30 tasks, not a color-coded spreadsheet 3. One might be writing a letter to a grieving friend, justice, another studying a philosophical text, wisdom, the third refusing a frivolous invitation, temperance. By sunset, if those were done, the day was a success. Everything else was noise. Modern research backs this ancient hack. Psychologists call it decision fatigue. The more choices you make, the worse your judgment becomes. Think of Steve Jobs wearing the same black turtleneck daily, or Warren Buffett's 2-list strategy, writing down 25 career goals, then circling just 5 and avoiding the rest at all costs. These aren't productivity tricks, they're defenses against the trivial. So try this tonight. Open your calendar and highlight every meeting, errand, or obligation from the past week that didn't serve your deeper values. The committee you joined out of guilt, the drinks with colleagues who drain your energy, the hours lost to social media debates. Seneca called these time thieves, not because they're evil, but because they're optional. The average person will spend 5 years of their life waiting in lines, 7 months scrolling screens. Imagine reclaiming just 10% of that for what truly matters. The Stoic 3-task rule forces a brutal prioritization. Before adding anything to your list, ask, does this cultivate wisdom, justice, courage, or temperance? If not, it's negotiable. A Roman senator like Seneca could have filled every hour with petitions and parties. Instead, he guarded his time like a general guarding a fortress, because every surrendered minute is territory lost to chaos. Your calendar is more than a schedule, it's the blueprint of your character. What would Seneca say if he saw yours? That answer might be the most important audit you'll ever conduct. Imagine spending years crafting your dream only to realize you built it for an audience that never really sees you. That's the paradox of fame in the digital age, where validation comes in pixels and metrics, and self-worth gets measured in follower counts. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who lived in Rome's glare 2,000 years ago, saw this coming. If you seek the approval of others, you become their prisoner. He wasn't just warning about critics, he was exposing the invisible cage of applause. Every refresh of your notifications, every glance at engagement stats is another bar in that cage. Take the case of a Grammy-winning artist who cancelled her world tour mid-performance, later confessing, "I kept waiting for the moment it would feel like enough more streams, more awards, more headlines." But the hunger just grew. Her burnout wasn't from hard work, it was from feeding an insatiable beast, the illusion that external validation could fill an internal void. The Stoics would nod knowingly. Epictetus, born into slavery and thus immune to society's accolades, put it bluntly, "If you wish to be great, stop asking for permission." Here's the uncomfortable truth scrolling won't tell you. Fame and fulfillment aren't just different, they're often opposites. Ancient Rome's gladiators knew this. The crowd's roar was intoxicating, but the smart ones saved their energy for the battles that mattered. Modern creators face the same trap, mistaking visibility for value, mistaking trends for truth. Marcus Aurelius, arguably history's most powerful man, wrote reminders to himself like, "It's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They're inescapable. Just try to escape your own." He ruled an empire but obsessed over self-mastery, not PR. So here's your challenge. For the next 24 hours, go dark on metrics. No checking likes, no refreshing analytics, no comparing your reach to others. Instead, borrow a Stoic journaling practice. Write down 3 things you created or did today that felt meaningful, separate from anyone's reaction. A home-cooked meal shared without Instagramming it. A project draft completed before checking its market potential. This isn't about rejecting success, it's about redefining it. When the timer hits 0, ask yourself, did the world end when you stopped watching the numbers, or did you finally hear the quiet voice of your own standards? Musonius Rufus offered a litmus test. When someone praises you, ask yourself, do they know my soul? The answer, then and now, is usually no. Real influence isn't measured in followers. It's the invisible ripple of actions taken when no one's watching. The gladiators who survived weren't the crowd pleasers. They were the ones who fought like their life depended on it, not their reputation. Your art, your work, your spirit deserves that same undivided attention. The arena of public opinion will always be fickle. Your integrity, that's a coliseum you build alone. We often picture Stoics as lone figures, Marcus Aurelius in his tent, Epictetus in exile, but this misses half the philosophy. Stoicism isn't just about personal grit, it's about weaving that grit into the fabric of community. Hierocles, a lesser-known but brilliant Stoic thinker, gave us a visual for this: concentric circles. Picture a stone dropped in water. The innermost ripple is you, then family, friends, neighbors, strangers, and finally, all humanity. The goal, pull those outer rings closer. Not by grand gestures, but by daily acts that quietly tighten the weave between self and society. Take the ancient practice of mystery benefaction, doing good anonymously. The Stoics weren't just avoiding praise, they were hacking human psychology. When you help without attaching your name, you eliminate the ego's whisper, "What will people think of me?" Imagine paying for a struggling student's lunch behind the counter, leaving warm socks at a shelter without signing them, or planting trees where no one knows you did it. These acts train something profound, the ability to care without expecting anything in return. Seneca called this the highest form of giving, not because it's saintly, but because it's free. Free from the need for recognition, free from the distortion of social currency. Here's where modern individualism gets it backwards. We're taught to focus on yourself first, as if self-care and social duty are opposites. But the Stoics saw them as gears in the same machine. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee," he wasn't preaching self-sacrifice, he was stating a fact. Your resilience means nothing if it doesn't ripple outward. Think of a nurse working double shifts during a pandemic. Her endurance isn't just personal, it's a thread holding up countless others. So try this today. Pick one circle outside your usual orbit. Maybe it's the elderly neighbor who never gets visitors, or the refugee family resettling in your city. The key is proximity, not writing a check to a distant charity, though that matters, but stepping into someone's world. Tutor a kid struggling with reading. Sit with hospice patients who have no family. Stock a community fridge with groceries. These aren't just good deeds, they're resistance against the lie that we're isolated islands. Hierarchical circles remind us compassion is a muscle. The more you stretch it beyond comfort, the stronger your spirit becomes. Because here's the secret no one tells you: serving others isn't just about them. It's about reminding yourself in the deepest, most visceral way that you belong to something vast, and in that belonging, you'll find a fortitude no solitary pursuit can match. Marcus Aurelius began each dawn with a ritual that seems almost radical in today's world of relentless striving. Before stepping into his role as emperor, he'd whisper to himself, "I shall meet ungrateful, violent, treacherous men today." But here's the twist: this wasn't cynicism. It was the setup for his secret weapon, gratitude. By naming the worst upfront, he could spot the ordinary gifts hiding in plain sight: the loyal advisor who showed up early, the fresh water in his cup, even the simple fact of waking up alive. He called this practice arming himself with thankfulness, and modern science now proves why it worked. Studies show gratitude doesn't just feel good, it rewires your brain, lowering cortisol by 23% and boosting resilience like an emotional Kevlar vest. Consider how entitlement operates. It's a lens that magnifies what you lack while shrinking what you have. The Stoics flipped this script. When Seneca lost his wealth and was exiled to Corsica, he didn't plead for pity. He wrote letters describing the island's wild beauty and the unexpected freedom of having nothing left to lose. His gratitude wasn't passive acceptance, it was active defiance against victimhood. Harvard researchers recently found something similar. People who journaled just 5 minutes a week about small blessings like a warm shower or a stranger's smile reported 25% higher life satisfaction than those tracking complaints. The magic isn't in the grand gestures, but in the micro moments we're trained to ignore. Here's the challenge hiding in your morning routine: that first sip of coffee. The electricity that brewed it, the quiet before your family wakes. These aren't just comforts, they're the threads Stoics wove into mental armor. Try this tonight. List 3 ordinary things you'd miss terribly if they vanished tomorrow. Not your job or your car, but the mundane miracles: the way sunlight hits your kitchen tiles at noon, the neighbor who waves without fail, the reliable hum of your refrigerator. Gratitude practiced this way isn't fluffy positivity, it's a tactical maneuver. By noticing what's already here, you starve entitlement of its oxygen. The Stoics knew something we often forget. Thankfulness isn't a reaction to abundance, it's the precursor to it. When Marcus wrote, "The universe is change, life is perspective," he was handing you a lens. Adjust it just slightly, and suddenly, the world you've been taking for granted reveals its hidden gifts. Your turn to train that lens, not because life is perfect, but because even in its imperfections, there's always something standing between you and emptiness. And that something, it's usually smaller, quieter, and more powerful than you ever noticed. Epictetus once challenged his students with a brutal question. If someone spoke of you the way you speak of others, would you stand to listen? That simple test exposes the toxic allure of gossip, how easily we trade dignity for fleeting entertainment. The Stoics weren't against conversation. They were war strategists with words. Silence to them wasn't empty space. It was the fertile ground where wisdom grew. Marcus Aurelius journaled privately for years, not because he lacked opinions, but because he knew the cost of scattering them carelessly. Today, we live in the opposite extreme. Social media rewards oversharing, every half-formed thought broadcast, every private grievance amplified. The average person spends 2.5 hours daily consuming fragments of strangers' lives while losing minutes of their own to reactive commentary. Here's the paradox: the more we speak, the less our words weigh. Ancient Rome's Senate had a practice called silentium, moments where no one spoke unless their contribution could survive a day's reflection. Compare that to our digital agora, where tweets vanish in seconds and stories expire in 24 hours. Epictetus warned, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak." Modern neuroscience confirms his intuition. Silence stimulates neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells, while excessive noise floods the body with cortisol. The Stoic discipline of restraint wasn't about repression. It was about preserving your inner sanctum. Try this experiment today. For 1 hour, mute all non-essential speech. No venting about coworkers, no commentary on headlines, no unsolicited advice. Just observe. You'll notice something startling: how much of your conversation is fueled by drama that doesn't serve you. A CEO client of mine did this and realized 80% of his meetings were debates over trivialities that changed nothing. Another discovered her group chats thrived on recycling outrage. Gossip acts like social glue until you realize it's binding you to pettiness. The real test comes when you ask, what fills the space when I stop filling it with noise? Maybe it's the insight that finally surfaces when you're not rehearsing grievances. Maybe it's the creative idea that arrives when you're not drowning in others' opinions. The Stoics called this hesychia, the sacred pause where clarity lives. Your words are currency. Spend them where they'll compound, not depreciate. There's a peculiar freedom in admitting, "I don't know," a liberation the Stoics discovered through an unlikely teacher, Socrates. Centuries before Zeno founded Stoicism, Socrates roamed Athens, exposing how little even the wisest truly understood. His famous declaration, "I know that I know nothing," wasn't false modesty. It was a radical act of intellectual humility. The Stoics adopted this mindset like armor, calling it apatheia, not apathy, but the clarity that comes when ego stops pretending to have all the answers. Picture a seasoned executive sitting in a beginner's coding class, or a professor attending their student's lecture on a foreign topic. That discomfort. That's the friction of growth. Zen Buddhism calls this shoshin, the beginner's mind. It's the practice of approaching even familiar subjects with fresh eyes, as if seeing them for the first time. Marcus Aurelius embodied this when he wrote, "Throw away your books, stop letting yourself be distracted." Not because learning was worthless, but because true wisdom begins when we stop performing competence and start cultivating curiosity. Think of a child asking, "Why is the sky blue?" Adults might chuckle at the simplicity, but that question contains a profound truth. Mastery isn't about accumulating answers, it's about sustaining wonder. Here's the challenge hiding in your expertise. Pick one topic you've confidently discussed at dinner parties, maybe cryptocurrency, wine tasting, or quantum physics. Now for 20 minutes, research it as if you're teaching a class on it tomorrow. you'll likely hit a wall where your knowledge ends and guesses begin. That wall is your growth edge. The Stoics didn't fear these gaps, they sought them deliberately. Epictetus, once a slave with no formal education, built his philosophy on this principle. It's impossible to learn what you think you already know. Practical tip: try the 5 whys technique borrowed from Toyota's engineers. Next time someone explains something you vaguely grasp, say how mortgages work, ask why 5 times. Why do interest rates rise? Because the Federal Reserve adjusts them. Why does the Fed adjust them? Each layer peels back assumptions you've accepted without scrutiny. Socrates used this method to dismantle Athenian politicians' pretenses. You can use it to dismantle your own intellectual complacency. The magic happens when you trade the weight of false expertise for the lightness of authentic curiosity. Seneca practiced this by writing letters to his young friend Lucilius, not as a sage dispensing wisdom, but as a fellow traveler saying, "Let's learn together." That's the heart of the beginner's mind, not knowing less but daring to question more. Your turn to sit in that uncomfortable, exhilarating space where growth begins. Cleans, the second leader of Stoicism, wasn't just a philosopher, he was a boxer. By day, he taught logic in the Stoa Poikile, Athens' painted colonnade. By night, he trained in the gymnasium, muscles burning as he wrestled opponents under the stars. His students whispered that he carried himself like a philosopher in the ring and a fighter in the lecture hall. But here's what they missed. To Cleans, these weren't separate pursuits. Every drop of sweat was a lesson in resilience, every aching muscle a reminder that discipline isn't abstract, it's etched into the body before it shapes the mind. Modern fitness culture often gets this backwards. We chase six-pack abs or marathon finish lines as ends in themselves, trophies for our vanity or social media feeds. The Stoics would call this a tragic misunderstanding. When Epictetus said, "First say what you would be, then do what you have to do," he wasn't just talking about career goals. He was describing the link between physical action and mental fortitude. Think of a weightlifter grinding through their last rep. The real test isn't the barbell, it's the voice in their head whispering, "You can't." The gym, to the Stoics, was a laboratory for practicing victory over that voice. Try this experiment. Your next workout, leave the headphones at home. No playlist, no podcast, just you and the raw sensation of movement. At first, the silence will feel oppressive. You'll notice every protest from your lungs, every doubt screaming louder without music to drown it out. That's the point. Ancient athletes didn't have noise-canceling earbuds. They had the rhythm of their breath and the metronome of their own resolve. What you're training isn't just muscle memory, it's the ability to stay present amidst discomfort, a skill that translates directly to weathering life's storms. The deeper question hiding in your squat rack or morning run is this: who's calling the shots, your mind or your ego? Vanity craves visible results, a smaller waistline, bigger biceps. Stoic fitness seeks invisible gains, the kind that don't show in mirrors but reveal themselves when you keep calm during a work crisis or choose patience with a difficult relative. Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial privileges, trained like a soldier, not to impress but to prepare. His journal reveals why. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, because an artful life requires being prepared to meet sudden and unexpected attacks. Consider the Japanese concept of misogi, a ritual challenge designed to push you beyond perceived limits. Ancient warriors would stand under freezing waterfalls for hours. Modern practitioners might attempt a 50-mile hike or a 100-mile bike ride. The common thread, voluntary hardship that strips away illusions of control. That's Stoic fitness in action, not punishing the body but allying with it to expose your mental weak spots. When your legs shake during a final set of lunges, you're not just building quad strength, you're rehearsing for the day life demands one more step when you're certain you have nothing left. So next time you tie your sneakers, ask yourself, is this workout a performance or a practice? Are you sculpting a statue or forging a spirit? Because the body you're training isn't just a vessel, it's the anvil where your indomitable will gets hammered into being. And every rep, every mile, every silent moment of resistance is another strike shaping something unbreakable. Seneca once described his era's version of modern burnout as crowded solitude, a surrounded by people yet starved of true connection, drowning in activity but thirsty for purpose. If he could see us now, endlessly refreshing feeds and juggling notifications like circus performers, he'd recognize the same emptiness wearing digital disguises. The average person touches their phone 2,600 times a day, switching tasks every 47 seconds. This isn't just distraction, it's fragmentation of the soul. The Stoics practiced something radical for their time-undivided attention. When Epictetus taught, he demanded students leave their scrolls at home, not because knowledge was worthless, but because presence was priceless. Imagine your phone as a Stoic training ground. Instead of silencing notifications indefinitely, a move that often backfires, try a notification fast. For 1 hour today, disable every alert except life or death calls. Not just flipping your phone over, but surgically removing the hooks in your brain that equate buzzes with importance. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You own what you will not give up in tragedy," he was probing your dependencies. Could you still think clearly without the dopamine drip of likes? The first 10 minutes will feel like withdrawal. That's the point. You're not just reclaiming time, you're rediscovering the weight of your own uninterrupted thoughts. History's most profound work was born from such depths. Beethoven composed his Ninth Symphony while completely deaf, his inner ear the only theater for the music. Mathematician Julia Robinson solved Fermat's last theorem in quiet hours stolen from domestic duties. Their genius wasn't in multitasking but in monotasking, the Stoic art of doing one thing with your whole mind. Ask yourself, what masterpiece have you postponed for the petty tyranny of pings? That book chapter, that business plan, that difficult conversation. Every quick check of your inbox is a trade, a fragment of your potential for a hit of artificial urgency. Here's the twist: digital minimalism isn't about rejecting technology. It's about weaponizing it. The Stoics didn't abandon writing scrolls. They used them deliberately. Treat your devices like Roman tools, a stylus for journaling, not a slot machine. Program your apps to serve your priorities, not corporate algorithms. Use website blockers during creative hours like Seneca used his country retreats, spaces where deeper work could breathe. The goal isn't to live like a hermit, but to engage with the modern world without letting it engage you. Try this audit tonight. Open your screen time report. For every app that consumed hours this week, ask Seneca's question: did this fill me or fracture me? Social platforms aren't evil, but passive scrolling is the opposite of Stoic agency. Transform your relationship by curating feeds that educate rather than numb. Follow historians instead of influencers, philosophers instead of pundits. Turn your pocket supercomputer into what Marcus might have called a mind gymnasium. The digital age doesn't have to mean shallow attention. With Stoic discipline, it can become the golden age of deep focus if you're willing to wrestle your attention back from the crowd. We've traveled through the Stoic toolbox: Control's sharp focus, Amor Fati's fierce embrace, Premeditatio Malorum's rehearsal of resilience. These aren't just ancient ideas gathering dust, they're live wires waiting to electrify your daily life. Picture them as a triad. Control carves the path, Amor Fati lights the way forward, and Premeditatio Malorum armors you against the storms. Together, they forge something unshakable, a spirit that doesn't just endure chaos but learns to dance with it. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned a life of slavery into a masterclass in freedom, left us with a whisper that echoes across centuries. You are unbreakable if you remain unshaken from within. That if is the hinge, not unbreakable because life spares you, but because you've trained your core to hold steady when the ground quakes. Think of a skyscraper swaying in high winds. Its strength isn't in resisting motion, but in the steel skeleton that keeps it upright. Your Stoic practices are that steel. Now, let's make this visceral. For the next 7 days, wear these tools like a second skin. Day 1. Wield the dichotomy of control like a scalpel slice every frustration into mine and not mine. Day 2. Meet one inconvenience with Amor Fati's grin, thank the delayed train for gifting you time to read. Day 3. Stare down a fear with Premeditatio Malorum. Play the worst-case scenario in your mind, then watch its fangs retract. Each day, layer another practice until they become reflex. The Romans had a word for this daily training: ascesis, not punishment, but the sculptor's chisel on marble. Your raw material, the moments that make you flinch, that co-worker's snide remark, chisel it into patience. The project that collapsed, carve it into wisdom. 7 days won't make you invincible, but they'll reveal what you're made of. Now, pass the chisel. Drop in the comments one practice that struck a chord. Was it Memento Mori's clarifying urgency? Or perhaps the view from above's cosmic perspective? Your share might be the spark someone else needs to start their own forge. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew: indomitable spirit isn't a solo act. It's a chorus of voices saying, try this, keep going, you're stronger than you think. The arena awaits. Step